Okay, so welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yes.
And today we are going to be looking at the aftermath
Hmm.
of the Hungarian presidency of the Council of the European Union.
Right.
And so,
I think most people probably don't know a ton about this.
right. Like
It's
the EU has a rotating presidency every 6 months.
exact.
So that's what we're,
Yeah, it's an interesting system, right?
yeah, it's
To ensure that each country,
it's supposed to be like a well-oiled machine, right?
Yeah.
Like each country's taking their turn at the helm.
And
Yeah.
and so the ideal is, like you said, a smooth transition.
Right.
That the EU just kind of keeps moving forward
Yeah.
as a united front.
Right.
Um,
And
and
of course,
the source that we're looking at today
yes,
is an opinion piece.
right.
And it paints a very, very different picture
It does.
of the Hungarian presidency.
Yeah, the author uses some pretty strong language. Loud, messy,
Provocative.
provocative, yeah.
Yeah.
To describe how Viktor Orbán approached this role.
Absolutely.
And they even quote him as saying,
Yeah.
me, me, me.
Me.
So
yeah.
it definitely makes you wonder, was this about the EU?
Right.
Or was it about Orbán?
And exactly, was this all about him? And I think that's a key question, right? Like,
Right.
the author argues that Orbán's actions projected this image
Yes.
of a divided Europe rather than
The united one.
a united one.
Yeah.
And this is especially concerning
Uh,
given all the challenges that the EU is facing right now.
Yeah, and the author wasn't surprised by any of this.
Oh, really?
They were raising concerns months before
Oh.
Orbán even took over.
So they were,
They point to his record in Hungary,
okay.
where he's been accused of weakening democratic institutions.
Right. Undermining the rule of law, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
It's interesting because...
the author highlights a very specific event.
Okay.
Orbán visits Putin in Moscow
Wow.
just 4 days
Wow. 4 days.
into his presidency.
Wow.
And this trip was taken without any prior consultation
All right.
with other European partners.
Yeah. Like, what message do you think he was sending with that?
It seems like he's trying to deliberately emphasize division.
Yeah. It's
Seems like he's going out of his way
Yeah.
to kind of like poke the bear a little bit.
Right. And the reaction within the EU was swift
Okay.
and strong.
Okay.
The author describes how the European Commission boycotted
Oh, wow.
informal council meetings.
So for people who aren't familiar with these informal meetings, this is where a lot of the EU's work gets done.
Right.
It's where they're negotiating, finding common ground,
Right.
building consensus.
It's where all the backroom deals are made.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for the commission to boycott that,
It's huge.
a powerful statement.
Of disapproval.
Yeah, and there's another point that I thought was really striking in the article.
Okay.
At the time,
Yeah.
Hungary was
Yeah.
and still is
Yeah.
in a perpetual state of emergency.
Right.
And the author just couldn't believe that a country
Yeah.
that's operating in constant crisis mode
Right.
could effectively lead the entire EU.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it does make you wonder,
Yeah.
like, how can you
Right. If you're constantly,
sets fire?
if your house is on fire, how can you help other people put out their fires?
Yeah.
Right?
And within Hungary,
Yeah.
Orbán has faced criticism
Right.
for allegedly governing by decree,
Okay.
bypassing parliament.
Right. So again, kind of like
yeah.
going around those democratic processes.
Right.
Yeah, which are
Right.
supposed to be
Core values of the EU.
of the EU. Yeah.
Right.
And then you have these accusations
Oh, yeah.
that the Hungarian government was bugging
Oh, wow.
the opposition leader's home.
Really?
So, I mean, that definitely raises eyebrows.
It does.
Yeah.
And while those accusations are serious,
Right.
it's important to remember that they are just accusations.
Right. They're just accusations at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is something to keep in mind.
It's interesting. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I found interesting about this article was
Yeah.
the author initially had some hope
Oh, really?
when the presidency first started.
Okay.
They mention the logo that the Hungarian government chose
Uh-huh.
for their presidency.
Okay.
It was a Rubik's Cube.
A Rubik's Cube.
And it was supposed to represent strategic thinking,
Okay.
problem solving.
Right. Very symbolic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
yeah.
the author argues that it failed to translate into any
Right.
meaningful action or progress.
Yeah.
The symbolism was there,
Yeah.
but the follow-through
The substance wasn't there.
wasn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the symbolism fell flat.
Right.
And the author ends on this really kind of ominous note.
Okay.
They predict that Orbán might use the upcoming December
Yeah.
European Council meeting
Uh-huh.
to pressure the EU
Okay.
into releasing frozen funds.
Oh, so to like
Yeah.
blackmail them, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
So
So it sounds like a potential power play.
it does.
Yeah.
And
This brings us to a really crucial question.
okay.
If, as this author argues, the Hungarian presidency produced nothing of substance,
Right.
then what does a successful presidency look like?
Right.
How can the EU ensure that future leaders prioritize the bloc's interests
Right.
over their own?
Right. What are the checks and balances in place
Exactly.
to prevent this kind of thing
Yeah.
from happening again?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big question.
It is a big question, and it's one that we don't have an easy answer for.
Right.
But I think it's something that's worth
Absolutely.
considering.
Yeah.
So we've just explored one perspective
Right.
on a very complex situation.
Very complex situation.
What does this deep dive tell you
Yeah.
about the challenges the EU is facing
Yeah.
and what the future might hold
Yeah. What do you think?
for the relationship between Hungary and the rest of Europe?
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments.
Yes.